with the buildings, it was, I really just wanted to look at my locality and where I was, and coming somewhere from, I used to be in Brisbane, and coming here straight away, it's such a unique little heritage listed area, especially in the West End. But then also finding out there are things like the power station. In Brisbane, it was all revamped, but here it still lays dormant, same as a wool store. So when I first got here, it was just really rough and really quite exciting to look at. I know it can look a bit derelict to some people, but I sort of found it fascinating, especially to draw. And that's when the power station, the wool stores, became a big part of my work. And then, yeah, so the first exhibition was based around the juxtaposition between the area of Notre Dame and the West End versus the power station, wool stores, and the falling apart. And so what's preserved and what's being well used and versus what is not. And then that progressed on slowly over the years to change different formats and looking at the different buildings to tell different stories. And then finally I came to, was it As Is in 2015? And that was about 12 pieces, and it was looking purely at the buildings that were altered by visual arts. So looking at the Fremantle Arts Centre, how it would never go back to what it was, being the old asylum, and the power station completely being revamped by the public. They've fully reclaimed it and taken it on board to decorate it. And also other beautiful buildings like PS Art Space and Customs House. And they have these really great art purposes, and also the popular Dingo flour mill. So that logo really has changed the face of that whole building, and now it's quite protected. So that was the main point across, was how strong the creative world can actually be to take on bricks and mortar and change its face and also preserve it. Coming from the steel industry and drawing structure was really quite second nature for me. And it gave me a lot of groundings with how to work with paper, how to compose my pieces. So things I didn't know about art before then. So the structures actually gave me this solid reference where it was quite mathematical. I did do some work with the National Trust earlier on. And it was really good because that got my eye in for a bit more detail. So when you're drawing something like the worn out power station, it's really scrappy and it's really all over the place and things are warped and it's really off. But when I was doing for the National Trust was they'd renovate their building and then I'd come draw it. Then they'd use the prints from the drawings as gifts to all their sponsors. And yeah, so it was just a few buildings that they had, like one of them was Wansley. The other was is it Stirling House, before it became the Early Learning Centre. And I found that was really great because these buildings were quite pristine once I'd finished with them, that I actually got my eye in for drawing a bit more accurately after that. And it also helped me branch into different styles of drawing and using much more broader ranges in my medium and investing a bit more different equipment to sort of seeing what else we can do with graphite. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, that little session, yeah. But my first works for the wool stores were, I fell in love with it because every little broken window and the shoes are all hanging from their laces on the light poles, and I did a series of works. And then after, was it Fremantle came along and put the zigzag iron through the windows, boarded it all up and made it look much more appealing, which for me it wasn't that exciting to draw anymore, but it was a lot safer and a lot more pleasing. I guess I was the one person that enjoyed the old broken windows, but yeah, it was quite interesting what they did with the building and how they approached actually boarding it up. But it's still sitting in disrepair regardless. And but it's funny to see that certain involvement and evolution, I should say. Sorry. The power station, titled Power Station, there's about 400 hours in that one, yeah. And a friend of mine, Dan Avila, who's a bit of a whiz with the photography, he had his drones fly past it so I could get multiple views of the building because you can't actually see it from this angle. Yeah, so using all the different views, I think about 3 different sections, and then so all your architects probably get a migraine looking at it because the perspective is just not there. Yeah, and then you'll be able to pull the hedges down, doing things to really maximise the face of the building. So yeah, it was fun being able to play with things like that and then being able to take the time to do it. Using big organisations like the Freo Arts Centre and stuff, using platforms like that to do the big works. I've always had learning difficulties when I was a lot younger and had a lot of trouble reading, especially up to adulthood. So learning ways to learn really and communicate, and that's how the art really came about. But then the more I've been drawing, and especially in the last 5 years, I learn. So if you put a book in front of me or a lecture, I don't soak anything in, but if I'm actually sitting and recreating something and then, or its image anyway, I'm driven to learn more about it, and I actually see things and solve problems. Finally understanding my way of learning, and the more I'm doing this, the more I just feel connected to the place around me, and that's why I'm really obsessed with just drawing my locality, what's around me, my experiences and my little travels, yeah.